This video is brought to you by Squarespace, the best all-in-one platform for any of your website building needs. Hey guys, it's Celestia, and it's been a while since I drew something really and truly dumb. And dumb for dumb's sake. In fact, it's been 3 entire months since I drew Chad Chin Celestia for the last art trope video, and that's just an inexcusably long period of time. I need an excuse to misuse my artistic abilities for evil again, and that means it's time for the next installment in the art trope roasting series. If you haven't seen the previous videos in that series and you aren't familiar with it, let me both point you towards the playlist with the other videos for your viewing pleasure, and also give you a quick rundown. It started off with me watching Bungo Stray Dogs for the 48th consecutive time, as one does, and feeling so much physical and mental anguish at the sight of Studio Bones fish-eyeing Atsushi so ridiculously poorly and ruining so many serious moments that I felt the need to rant about my top 10 least favorite art-based tropes in anime in a video, which I then messily doodled Celestia as. Since then, Fish-Eye Celestia has absolutely haunted my nightmares, and may very well be one of the worst things I've ever created, right up there with Chad Chin. But you guys liked that video for some reason, so I made a follow-up with my top 10 favorite or best art tropes in anime, and then kept the series going by moving on to Western animation with a top 10 worst art tropes in Western animation video. But it's been a while since that last one, so in today's video, I'm gonna get back into it by poorly drawing Celestia as my top 10 best favorite art tropes in Western animation. And just to be completely transparent with you guys, titles like top 10 best or top 10 worst art tropes are based exclusively on my opinions and literally just vibes. And while I obviously put the utmost value on my own opinions as ultimate universal truths, they aren't, and I am unfortunately aware of that. The number one best animation trope is decided almost entirely based on how funny I find it, and the worst one is based on how much it pisses me off. So please don't take these lists to be any kind of objective analysis based on real criteria any deeper than that. They're joke videos for fun that give me an excuse to draw Celestia as dumb art tropes, and you're not only welcome to disagree with my placements, I fully expect and encourage you to. And filling you with rage and sparking infuriated comment section discourse over the fact that I called Light Yagami a generic brown-haired anime boy back in episode 1 is half the reason I make these. Just be respectful and don't take my rankings too seriously. But before we get into that, let me take a moment to thank today's sponsor, Squarespace, a longtime partner of the channel that's become such a well-known presence in my videos that it's apparently alarming to you guys when I don't open one without talking about them first. And as I've said before, good. Jokes aside, I'm actually proud to be that associated with them. I've been using their platform for so long now to make and host both my personal Duchess Celestia portfolio site and the site for my art studio, Royal Starship Studios, that I know better than most exactly how versatile and reliable they really are, which is why they're always my first recommendation when anyone I know needs their own site built. And that's why they're my first recommendation to you, too, because I sincerely believe it when I say they're the best website building and hosting platform out there. Their extensive library of pre-built site templates is so massive that I can say with confidence that no matter what kind of site you need or what vision you have in mind for it, you'll be able to find the perfect one for it on Squarespace. Gorgeous portfolios, professional online stores, interactive blogs, eye-catching landing pages, and all of that is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what their templates can help you build. And editing them to suit your preferences perfectly and bring that vision you have for your site to life has never been easier with Fluid Engine, Squarespace's next-generation editing system that lets you customize every aspect of your site with its smooth, user-friendly drag-and-drop interface. Taking it one step further and turning your site into an online store is just as easy with their e-commerce and print-on-demand integration, letting you sell everything from physical goods to digital content, and letting your customers pay with anything from credit cards to PayPal and Apple Pay, and in eligible countries, flexible long-term payment alternatives like Afterpay and ClearPay. And I'm not even done. They've got SEO options designed to get your sites to reach as many eyes as possible, visual design tools that help you build brand recognition, social media account connectivity, and so much more. Honestly, Squarespace just has tools to make every step of the web design and hosting process so much easier. And you can find out yourself by going to squarespace.com/DuchessCelestia, linked in the description, and use code DuchessCelestia for 10% off your first domain purchase. Thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video, and please go check them out. All of that out of the way, let's get into the video. Number 1 on my list of best animation art tropes is one that actually might have a significant number of haters, liable people to vehemently disagree with my ranking of it, but I stand by it. It's dumb, but I love it, and it's what TV Tropes calls the cheated angle. Basically, it's when a character has a defining feature that's always visible no matter the angle or perspective, even when it shouldn't be. Probably the most well-known example for most people is Goku, whose iconically recognizable hair silhouette changes with him no matter what direction he's facing. And more amusingly, seems to be at a side angle facing one way or the other even when Goku himself is facing forwards. It's because his hair is only recognizable by that famous shape when it's at a side angle. So even if the dude's looking head-on at the camera, he's gotta maintain that stereotypically Goku silhouette by either 1, having his hair defy all laws of perspective by never being viewable head-on, ensuring that the sight of his hair from a direct front-facing perspective is as rare and mythical as a blurry photo of Bigfoot, or 2, actually just separating his hair into its own living, conscious entity that simply faces whichever direction it pleases independent from Goku's head, with no regard at all for where he's looking. But that's anime, and we're talking about Western animation where this trope might even be more prevalent. No matter how Mickey Mouse turns his head, you can see both of his ears clearly and with a rigidly consistent amount of space between them. Our girl Ami here's little hair flower is in exactly the same place no matter what direction she's facing. Stewie from Family Guy can only ever be viewed from head on, because otherwise how would we know that his head is a football? From the side it would just be a regular ball, and where would we even be then? Brian, conversely, can only ever be viewed from this weird 3/4 angle, because if we look at him head on, we have to look at this, and I don't think anyone wants that. Fry from Futurama can also only ever be seen from the side, because his cowlick is half of his visual identity, and if it isn't visible, is he even really Fry? Princesses Luna and Celestia from My Little Pony, the latter of which is not the inspiration for my name, despite how many people claim otherwise to my endless amusement, would have their entire faces obscured by their manes if viewed from the wrong angle, so their mane is automatically on the other side regardless of where they're facing. There's tons of similar examples of characters with bangs that cover one eye, but which eye they cover depends on the direction they're looking so that we always see the open eye, like Desiree from Danny Phantom. There are literally so many examples of this that I could spend a whole video just listing them, and honestly, I understand why. This one is number 1, not only because I think it's funny, although that is, like in most situations, my number 1 priority, but because it makes sense, which is why it's so prevalent. Making sure a character's silhouette is recognizable, especially in a medium where very simplified forms are commonplace if not altogether necessary, is incredibly important. So it makes sense that accurate perspectives would be less important than preserving that. But more importantly, it's funny, and I imagine the characters having to physically rearrange their hair every time they have the audacity to want to face a different direction, and I chuckle. And that chuckle is worth enough to me to place the cheated angle trope at a confident number 1. Number 2 has also earned its place based on comedic value alone, and it's the fingerless hands. And okay, it's one thing when every character in the series is drawn without fingers, where their hands are really just like ambiguously considered to be the rounded ends of their arms. It's still funny to watch them effortlessly interact with objects like keyboards or instruments that objectively require the dexterity of fingers with what are effectively large sausages for both arms and hands, even if everyone in that piece of media is at the same disadvantage. But it's 10 times funnier when some characters aren't. The moment an animated show gives me a character with sausage arm blobs with no semblance of a single finger, and puts them beside another character with completely normal hands, I'm sold. That show could have my kidneys and my firstborn son if it asked. I understand that fingers just don't suit some character designs in very simple styles, and while Patrick from SpongeBob does receive the occasional privilege of being given a thumb, I recognize that if he had a full 5 fingers at all times, he would probably look like my sleep paralysis demon. I also recognize that the other characters would look weird without them, because if SpongeBob's lanky-ass noodle arms didn't have proper full hands at the end, I would be sincerely concerned for his well-being for an entirely new set of reasons. And I have plenty already. I grew up watching that show. On a logical level, I understand that there are reasons for some characters getting fingers while others don't, even in the same piece of media. That does not stop me, however, from finding it hilarious or impatiently waiting the rest of my life for the day when a show actually has a self-aware character acknowledge the finger-hand inequality and give some kind of lore-based explanation for it. Number 3 is a classic as old as time that requires very little introduction, and it's when the lights go out and instead of having the characters be completely obscured by the darkness, their eyes are still completely visible. And not dimly, either, like it could be argued that maybe they're slightly reflecting some kind of distant ambient light source. No, they are the light source. The eyes themselves are producing light with the efficiency and strength of several small suns, and yet simultaneously shed absolutely no light at all on even their immediate surroundings. It's such an iconic animation art trope that I feel like anyone who's even just watched a handful of cartoons in their life has seen at least one example of it, and it's just such a staple of animation comedy that I had to include it on the list. It's not necessarily as funny to me as the idea of Blossom playing the guitar without fingers for an audience of normal hand-havers right beside her, but the mental image of a room full of people suddenly developing Mothman levels of ocular reflectiveness the moment they forget to pay the power bill is amusing enough to at least earn a mention. Maybe it's because I've spent the majority of my adult life living with cats and stumbling out of the bed in the middle of the night to see an ominous pair of glowing, floating eyes jump scaring the shit out of me at 2 in the morning when all I wanted was to pee. I don't know. Moving on. Number 4 is on here in large part because I'm desperate to be able to replicate it in reality, and it's when a character disappears and leaves nothing but a dotted outline of their form to show where they were standing. There are just so many instances where I would pay exorbitant amounts of money to be able to do that. Like, not just disappear at a moment's notice, but leave my outline there for at least a good 10 seconds so that anyone around is fully aware that I developed the ability to teleport out of sheer will to get away from them. And they have to sit with that knowledge for just long enough to appreciate the insult that should absolutely be interpreted as. There is very little I wouldn't sacrifice to be able to blip out of existence the next time I'm having dinner with my very conservative family members sharing their political views without prompting over overcooked steak and way too much wine, leaving nothing but the blinking outline of my former form to suggest that I was ever even there at all. We're estranged now, so it could be argued that I just chose a vastly less funny, more permanent method of achieving the same outcome, but there's still no shortage of other uncomfortable situations I would make a swift and spiteful exit from that way if I was animated. And I would even go so far as to say that if I had to pick between the ability to make my glasses do the anime glint at will like the top 10 best anime art tropes video, and this, I would pick this. And I really want to be the next Ongo, so that's saying something. Next up, we have the robot hair, which is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. When robot characters who would have absolutely no reason to have hair, nor the ability to grow it, have metal hair, I guess, that is ostensibly a naturally occurring part of their body. Sometimes it seems to be human-like hair, either growing out of their metal bodies inexplicably or just fastened on like a wig. Other times it's literally just a metal form attached to them in the shape of human hair. But the bottom line is that there's no functional reason I can think of for a robot to have hair. So it's immediately amusing to me when they not only do anyway, but it's implied that whoever made them specifically went out of their way to give them hair for no reason beyond purely aesthetic value alone. I just love envisioning a lab full of roboticists that have spent years trying to create the perfect android. They finally succeed. It's the culmination of their life's work. They finally present this android that's their pride and joy to their boss, and he's just like, where the fuck is its hair, Carl? How are we gonna know if it's a girl android or a boy android without gender-based hair length stereotypes to guide us? How is it gonna flip its hair over its shoulder to show cold-hearted superiority without hair, Carl? Use your head. Number 6 is another trope that I wish I could replicate in reality, and it's what TV Tropes calls wingding eyes. If you're not an Undertale fan with a weird hyperfixation on Gaster, like I'm definitely not, and therefore aren't familiar, and yes, that's obviously the only reason you'd know a common Windows font, I stand by it. Wingdings is a font where every keyboard letter corresponds with a symbol rather than a letter. In this case, the reference to it is based on the fact that in a lot of animated media, a character's pupils will turn into the symbol of whatever it is they currently want. The most common examples are obviously dollar signs for money and hearts for love, but I've seen it with food items, stars for when the character wants fame or recognition, flames when they're really pissed off or motivated, and so on. It's funny, it's cute, and I am desperate for the ability to shift my pupils into packs of Animal Crossing amiibo cards next time I go to a GameStop to make it abundantly clear to everyone around me that I will stop at nothing to finally get Sherb's goddamn card. And that includes, but is not limited to, physically attacking anyone who dares to stand in my way. And number 7 is on here for exactly the same reason. My immense desire to be able to do it in real life. It's that dumb scribble that shows up above a character's head when they're pissed off to really drive home that whatever is going on, they are just not having it. Bonus points if it's like that scene in Family Guy where the scribble's existence is openly acknowledged. I just feel like it would be a lot clearer to the other residents of my apartment building that I do not want to share the elevator with them and their clouds of overwhelmingly terrible cologne and unavoidable small talk if I could project a scribble of frustration over my head at will. And maybe then we could just get to the first floor together in silence rather than pretending either of us had the slightest real interest in thoroughly discussing what the weather is like that day. Yes, Dave, it's snowing in May. It's Alberta. This isn't news. Please just let me get my mail in peace. And maybe he would if I was animated with a scribble. That's all I'm saying. Number 8 might get me some flack for including, not because it's not great, but because it's arguably much more prevalent in anime than in Western animation, and it's the eyes always shut trope. You know the one. The character who does not open their eyes no matter what to a comedically ridiculous degree, and if they ever do, you know shit just got real and you're probably in immediate physical danger. And yeah, that would be a fair point, because the first examples that come to mind are Brock from Pokemon and Ronpo from Bungo Stray Dogs. But to be perfectly honest with you, I completely forgot about this trope when I was making the anime tropes videos, and I couldn't just not include it at all when I realized that too late afterwards, so here it is. There's still no shortage of examples in Western animation though, like Badger Clops from Mau Mau Heroes of Pure Heart, Grandpa Max from Ben 10, Shriek from Cat Dog, and Gaz from Invader Zim. So I stand by my choice to keep it here. The trope is 10 times better when it's openly acknowledged by other characters too, and that's actually one of the reasons that it is one of my favorites, because it's one of the few tropes on here that does get acknowledged pretty often within the shows that include it. A lot of the iconic Eyes Always Shut characters that come to mind openly have other characters call them out for their consistent and deliberate choice not to open them, which is doubly funny when they're legitimately feared when they do because of how rarely that happens. It's a classic, it's iconic, I love it, and I hate myself for forgetting it in the anime video, so I will die on the hill of putting it here. And it's definitely not just so I can find an excuse to shove Ronpo's face in a video again because I love him. Up next is number 9, yet another trope that's included based on comedic value alone, the looming silhouette of rage. Listen, I'm an angry person. I have a lot of rage in me, probably more than blood and oxygen combined, and by no small margin either. So when I look at a trope where a character is so goddamn mad that they physically grow in size and darken into a shadow figure that looms over whoever was foolish enough to wrong them, I can't not identify with that. And being a creator who frequently makes the mistake of looking at my own comment section means I don't just identify with the looming silhouette of rage, but also with the poor buffoon left with no choice but to cower in fear of that silhouette. Honestly, any animated exaggeration of rage gets a good chuckle out of me as a connoisseur of anger, but this one's particularly good to me just because it's such a goddamn vibe. I remember one time when I was a kid and I got caught stealing my friend's Pokemon card, and I swear to God, my mother became that looming silhouette. Maybe not visually, because not even she, in all her parental disappointment, possessed the power to literally become animated, but the aura of rage emanating off of her body was so overwhelming that she quite frankly didn't need to. Tragically for her, the only lesson I learned was to not get caught stealing Pokemon cards rather than to stop stealing Pokemon cards. But I'm sure she can take solace in the fact that it struck a fear in my heart that has lasted 2 entire-ass decades, and she is, after all this time, still the first thing I think of when I see this trope, which is funny enough to me to warrant its inclusion. Finally, we're at number 10, the eyeglasses, or in the case of characters like Robin from Teen Titans and similar masked superheroes, the eye masks. Basically, when a character not only is always wearing glasses or a mask, but the moment they put them on, those accessories stop being accessories and just literally become their eyes. They're no longer inanimate objects. They are now, by way of being on the character's face alone, capable of movement and expression as if they're physically a part of their body. I'm out here spending half an hour doing eye makeup alone just to have my glasses basically make it so no one can really see it anyway, while these lucky assholes just get to have their eyes merged directly into their glasses or masks, with no concern for eyeliner in the slightest. But they get a comedy pass if their eyes are just tiny dots behind their glasses and then they take them off, and instead of having actual eyes like we as viewers would have assumed were just obscured by the glass, they still just have tiny dots. I can't not imagine that in a realistic setting when I see it. And there we have it, my top 10 favorite best animation art tropes. Exactly a million years later than promised, but still here. I'm sure at least a handful of you absolutely hate these, so I'm looking forward to seeing you inevitably roasting both the tropes and me for liking them in the comments. Because if history is anything to go by, you will, and I welcome it. That's the whole point of these. There's so much real online discourse that's legitimately worth arguing over that I take immense pleasure in providing the stupidest possible alternative discourse that absolutely isn't worth the time it takes to argue about, but that I know you will anyway. I think we all need that sometimes. Don't forget to check out the other videos in the series if you like this one, and keep an eye out in the coming months because it is not over. I have roasted the worst anime and animation art tropes and praised the best, but I'm not done. Next up is character design tropes, and given that I've already got them all lined up and listed, I can say with confidence that I will definitely have them roasted and illustrated in the vaguely near future. future, and it will be just as dumb as this was. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. Special thank you as always to channel members Joseph Solomon, TC Pratt, Zelda Deverak 42, Abyss Reborn, Haruki Kyle, King Good James, Cutie Sailor Lovely, Inside Chaos, CP Lil Thing, and Art of Amethyst Fable, as well as patrons Batman, Kyle Lowe, Blue Swanson, Cora Fear, Jamisha Walker, Alengshi, Kim Yen, Crazy Yasar, Gentong, Grace Nick Xavier, MG, Blah Mage, TC Pratt, Finn, Grim Spectre, Celine Merriman, Ash, Eldritchia, The Stray Dog, Ulura, Greg Noble, Decagon, Jenny Chan, Captain Reku, Ryan M. Williams, Catbus, Alec Reinekainen, Mac, Lucy Yamajiki, Selena Bibi, Friday, Totally Shogun, Insomniac Sleep Schedule, Lola the Pinky, Wing Wong, and Smiley Boy, and I'll see you in the next one.